For most of human history, the smartest people alive were certain the Earth sat at the center of the universe, that your health was ruled by 4 fluids, that life could sprout from rotting meat. They weren't stupid. They had evidence, logic, and near-total certainty. And they were completely wrong. These are the scientific facts that fooled the entire world, starting with the one that put us at the center of everything. For 14 centuries, the greatest minds on Earth agreed on one thing. Everything revolved around us. The sun, the moon, the planets, the stars, all of it circling a motionless Earth at the center of creation. It wasn't just religion, it was science, the meticulous model of the astronomer Ptolemy. So accurate it could predict the planets for over 1,000 years. Then, in 1543, a Polish astronomer named Copernicus dropped a bomb. What if the Earth moves? What if we orbit the sun? When Galileo pointed a telescope at the sky and found the proof, his reward wasn't a prize. He was tried by the Inquisition, forced to kneel and deny what he had seen with his own eyes, and spent his final years under house arrest. The truth, that we are not the center of anything, was so offensive it was nearly buried. The next mistake didn't just insult us, it killed people for 2,000 years. For 2,000 years, medicine was built on a beautiful and completely false idea that the human body was governed by 4 fluids: blood, phlegm, and 2 kinds of bile. Get sick, and it meant your humors were out of balance. The cure? Rebalance them, usually by draining your blood. Doctors bled patients for almost every illness, with knives and leeches, sometimes by the pint. It didn't heal, it killed. In 1799, George Washington woke with a sore throat. Over a single day, his doctors removed around 40% of his blood. He was dead by nightfall. It took the germ theory of disease, the radical idea that tiny invisible organisms, not fluids, make us sick, to finally end it. The most trusted medical fact in history had been quietly killing the people it was meant to save. And the next belief was even stranger, that life itself could appear out of nothing. Where do maggots come from? For most of history, the answer seemed obvious. Rotting meat simply turns into them. Mice came from old grain and rags, flies from filth. It was called spontaneous generation, the belief that living things spring, fully formed, from non-living matter. It appeared to happen everywhere, all the time. Everyone could see it with their own eyes. But in the 1600s, an Italian named Francesco Redi covered some meat with gauze, and no maggots appeared. Then, in 1859, Louis Pasteur ended the debate for good, with a specially shaped flask that let air in, but kept dust and microbes out. The broth inside never spoiled. Life did not appear from nothing. It always came from other life. A fact the entire world had watched with its own eyes was an illusion. The next mistake was invisible, a substance no one could see, that every scientist knew was there. In the 1700s, chemists believed fire was a substance. They called it phlogiston, an invisible material stored inside anything that could burn. Light a candle, and you were watching phlogiston escape into the air. It was elegant. It explained combustion, rust, even breathing. Nearly every chemist in Europe built their work on it. There was just one nagging problem. When some metals burned, they got heavier, not lighter. If burning released a substance, how could the ash weigh more? A French chemist named Antoine Lavoisier found the answer: fire isn't a thing being released. It's a reaction, with a gas in the air he named oxygen. He didn't just kill phlogiston, he founded modern chemistry. His reward, 20 years later, was the guillotine in the chaos of the French Revolution. The judge reportedly said the Republic had no need of scientists. The next science didn't study fire. It claimed to read your very soul, from the bumps on your head. In the early 1800s, a new science swept the world. It promised to reveal your intelligence, your morality, your entire character, just by feeling the bumps on your skull. It was called Phrenology. Clinics opened across Europe and America. Employers used it to hire. Courts used it to judge. And most darkly, it was used to prove that some peoples were naturally inferior, a pseudoscience that dressed up prejudice as measurement. It was completely false. The shape of your skull tells you nothing about your mind. But here is the strange twist. Phrenology stumbled onto one real idea, that different parts of the brain do different jobs. That single seed, buried in a mountain of nonsense, helped grow real neuroscience. The world had been fooled by a science of bumps. The next one fooled the greatest physicists alive, with an ocean that wasn't there. By the 1800s, physicists had a problem. Light travels in waves, and waves, they knew, need something to travel through. Sound needs air, ocean waves need water. So light must move through some invisible substance, filling all of space. They called it the luminiferous ether, a ghostly medium that simply had to exist, even though no one could detect it. In 1887, two scientists, Michelson and Morley, built an experiment precise enough to measure the Earth moving through this ether. The result? Nothing. The ether simply was not there. Physics fell into crisis until a young patent clerk named Albert Einstein realized the medium had never been needed at all. His theory of relativity explained light without it and rewrote space and time in the process. An invisible ocean the smartest people alive were certain existed, never did. And Einstein himself was about to make one of the most famous mistakes in the history of science. When Albert Einstein applied his equations to the entire universe, they told him something he refused to believe. The universe should be moving, expanding, or collapsing, but never still. Einstein was certain the cosmos was eternal and unchanging. So he did something he would later regret. He added a fudge factor, a cosmological constant invented purely to hold the universe still. Then, in 1929, the astronomer Edwin Hubble looked deep into space and saw the galaxies flying apart. The universe was expanding, exactly as Einstein's original equations had predicted before he corrected them. That expansion pointed back to a single explosive beginning, the Big Bang. Einstein called the cosmological constant the biggest blunder of his life. Even the greatest mind of the century got it wrong, by trusting what he wanted to be true over what the math was telling him. Our last mistake was defended so fiercely that one man had to poison himself to prove it wrong. For most of the 20th century, every doctor knew what caused stomach ulcers: stress, spicy food, and too much acid. It was medical common sense, taught in every school, worth billions in treatments that never actually cured anyone. Then, in the 1980s, two Australians, Barry Marshall and Robin Warren, found something impossible: bacteria living in the acid of the stomach, a bug called H. pylori. They argued it, not stress, caused ulcers. The medical world laughed them out of the room. Bacteria could not survive in stomach acid, everyone knew that. So Barry Marshall did something desperate. He grew a batch of the bacteria and he drank it. Within days, he was violently ill with gastritis, the early stage of an ulcer. Then he cured himself with antibiotics, proving his point on his own body. In 2005, Marshall and Warren won the Nobel Prize. The fact an entire profession was certain of was cured with a pill. The center of the universe, the four humors, life from rotting meat, the fire element, the science of skull bumps, the invisible ocean, the unchanging cosmos. Every one of these was settled science, believed by the smartest people alive, backed by evidence, taught as fact. And everyone was wrong. Here is what that should teach us. Certainty is not the same as truth. The people who believed these things weren't fools. They were us, doing the best they could with what they had. Which raises an uncomfortable question. How many things we are certain about today will look just as absurd in 200 years? Science isn't a list of facts. It's a method for being less wrong over time, one overturned certainty at a time. And that willingness to admit we got it wrong is one of the most powerful ideas humans ever had. Subscribe, because the Obscura archives are full of things the world was never supposed to forget.